All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. Really excited about tonight. We have Nick Taylor joining us from Found North Whiskey. I'm personally super excited with what they've got going on. I know some of you are really excited with what they're doing. So tonight is going to be fairly informal. We want to give Nick an opportunity to kind of talk about what it is they're actually doing, what projects they've already got out, what they're looking for in the future, and then for us to have an opportunity to taste through some of their products and have him talk about that, get everyone really excited, and get everybody watching kind of an idea of what we can look forward to maybe in the coming year. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and bring Nick in. Hey, Nick.
Hey, hey.
All right. Hey, thanks again for joining us, taking time out of your busy schedule, sending us some samples, and really helping us get the word out. I'm really excited about what you guys are doing, and I want everybody else in our group to get excited about what you guys are doing.
Yeah, man. Hey, thanks for having me. I would say this is probably the most fun part of my job, right? I get to just like drink and talk about whiskey with people. it's
Right.
it's a pretty sweet part of the gig. So, no, I'm really delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right. So, yeah, why don't we? So, everybody, just as a reminder for everybody, we've got left to right, starting our glasses, batch three, batch four, batch five, then your single barrel, and then batch six. And while we kind of get into batch three, because I don't want to hold anybody up from tasting this whiskey, you want to kind of give us your intro and where this even came from and what the heck you guys are doing.
Yeah, so I love that. I'm anytime I do a tasting, the first thing I always say is we get to pour the first whiskey. There's literally nothing worse in a tasting than, particularly if you go in person, but actually, frankly, on through a digital tasting as well. There's nothing worse than the guy talks or the woman talks for 30 minutes, and then it's like, all right, let's taste the first whiskey. You're like, are you serious, man? I'm here to drink these whiskeys.
Right.
So I'm very, very delighted. Let's definitely pour batch three. And I like starting with batch three for two reasons. One, it's probably the lightest profile of everything we're going to drink tonight, which is saying something about Found North in that it's a cast strength 17-year 110.2 proof whiskey. So if that's the lightest whiskey we have, buckle up. But no, it's very representative of um, what Found North started as from an intent, what we intended it to start as. Because for us, we really wanted to make cast strength rye, but we wanted to make aged cast strength rye. And what we found was when we were looking at the whiskey industry, particularly in the U.S., you had very, very young ryes that were coming actually out of the United States, and then you had very, very old ryes, sometimes bottled as a quote unquote American brand, but um, the liquid was clearly being sourced from Canada. And when we looked at Canadian whiskey and how the Canadians were making Canadian whiskey, what we saw incredible history, incredible actual technique in their distilling practices and their maturation practices. But then you're seeing a lot of these whiskeys that 40% chill filtered, caramel coloring, um,
Mhm.
basically all the things that were kind of turning us off from whiskey coming out of Canada personally, my brother and I who founded the company. And then when we were seeing a lot of these whiskeys that were Canadian juice coming from Canada, but being bottled by Americans, we were rarely seeing it blended. And the funny thing about Canadian whiskey is it's designed to be blended, and that's a funny thing because we've been trained as sort of a broader whiskey community to hear the word blend and go, ooh, God, no. But the funny thing is, like, virtually every distillery, if they're not making a single barrel, they're doing some form of blending. And when we think blended, we often will actually think blended from a bunch of different distilleries. But in truth, Canadian distilleries are usually making quote unquote blended whiskey with all their own stuff, which is kind of the same thing that's happening at distilleries across the United States. It's not like Scotland where they're buying a little from here, buying a little from there, buying a little from here, and blending it together. Nonetheless, the way that Canadians make whiskey is they distill the grains individually with the intention of blending them. So rather than doing a mash bill where you're blending the grains together, then fermenting it, distilling it, and aging it, and having kind of a done final product at the end of the maturation process, Canadians are saying, okay, let's use 100% corn, let's use 100% rye, let's use 100% barley, let's use 100% wheat, let's ferment them and distill them individually, age them individually, and then let's blend them at the end. And the idea is that blending has been sort of the artistry aspect of making whiskey in Canadians' minds for the last 150 years. And so it's, let's make the best paint, and then let's let the master blender paint the best picture with it. And that had a lot of appeal to us because we said, okay, we don't need to follow from a stylistic standpoint what's coming out of Canada. We can really opt into more of an American style from a flavor standpoint. But at the same time, unlike the American brands that we're sourcing from Canada, we're not going to treat it like it's MGP and just buy one lot of barrels and bottle it up, because that was never the intention of the whiskey. And honestly, it doesn't optimize it. It doesn't make it taste the best it can. And so for us, we said, all right, there's this great old rye in Canada. We're going to blend it. We're going to make it into cask strength rye whiskey in the American style. But we're going to be really upfront about the fact that it's from Canada. And that's why we're, by the way, a bunch of Americans making Canadian whiskey, which always throws people through a loop. It's like, what are you doing? Why aren't you just buying from MGP? But for us, it was like, where can we get access to really well-made, really old whiskey, and then actually have control over how it's going to taste? So the first bet, go ahead.
When you went into it, did you know that's kind of what you wanted to do? And was that the reason why you looked at Canada in the first place? Was that because of the age statements, and then that led you to do the blending? And by the way, hopefully you guys are nosing and tasting batch 4 while we're doing this. Or batch 3. Like Nick said, get into it, because I want you guys to get a little familiar with the whiskey. Because if questions pop up, let's shoot them over to Nick, and because man, batch 3, I love it. I get so much honey and candy on batch 3.
So the answer is we knew a little bit about whiskey, right? And aged whiskey, there's sometimes a misconception of like wood equals age, and it's not actually fully accurate. There are basically, when whiskey's aging, there are several reactions that are happening. One, there's extractive, right, which is the whiskey is literally pulling compounds out of the wood. The next is basically the charcoal is removing impurities and things from the whiskey itself, right? It's taking out some of the bad notes, which is one of the reasons why they charcoal the inside of the barrel. But the third is the oxidative reaction, and it's just literally when you char the inside of the barrel, it makes the oxygen molecules that are in the barrel much more reactive with the liquid itself. And it's one of the best parts of aging whiskey. It's one of the best parts of making whiskey. And so the kind of the old adage that, the older the whiskey is, the better it is, definitely isn't necessarily true. But there are certain aspects of old whiskey that you can only get from the whiskey being old. You can't just put it in temperature control. You can't just, shrink the barrel and add the wood contact. You actually need time in the barrel and that interaction with oxygen. And so when you nose batch 3, one of the things you'll immediately notice is it's very fruit forward. in my opinion, it's about as fruit forward a rye as you'll find. It's fruity, it's floral, and that is simply time in a barrel. And so when we got into this, we were like, one, there's really interesting old rye in Canada, and that was kind of our first instinct, but we weren't we weren't positive it was going to be good. It wasn't until we started getting samples and we really started exploring with some of the interesting maturation regimens and frankly some of the corn components. We didn't know that the corn components would be so crucial for blending and so good. And when we get into batch 4, you'll see what I'm talking about, because those are mostly made of the corn components. And so there was, whenever in hindsight, whenever you talk about it, it sounds like, and I'm supposed to make it sound like we had this sort of grand master plan and knew exactly where the product was going and where the brand was going. That would be a lie. We didn't know exactly what we were going to end up being, but we knew what we were looking for, which was old, good rye that had matured well. What we discovered and how we actually formulated the blends ourselves, that took fine tuning and that took time.
Okay. Well, let's hear from the group. Anybody got any thoughts on batch 3? What you think? Do you have any questions for Nick? Nobody? Does anybody like it?
Yes.
I love it. I love it.
I'm really glad he mentioned corn. I mean, this may not have much of it in it, but the first note I got instantly was some sort of corn or like a young grain. And then like honey roasted peanuts, butter caramel, just a little bit of char going on. And then as it sat there and lingered out on my tongue, like dried apricots. I don't know if that's a good description of what I got, but I like it.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking, Nick, I'm looking at basically your label that you put on here, and 64% rye, 32% corn, 4% malted barley. And that to me, if I just read that, I'm like, oh, that's a Kentucky rye. Like it's a little more than a barrel legal rye, but that's like a Kentucky rye. And like you said, you didn't have that master plan going into it, but when you started taking these individual components and blending them, were you kind of shooting for those mash bill percentages that we're used to?
Not at all. No. Honestly, when we first started, we were mostly working with 100% rye components, and we were trying to get it to work. Beyond some sort of some guys on our team that had mixology experience, we were pretty green when it came to blending, and we were learning on the fly. And so when we started, we kept trying to blend rye components, and as it turns out, this came to a shock to us, but probably shouldn't have. But it turns out rye tends to be quite astringent on its own. It's a tricky grain to work with. It was much easier to make. Honestly, it was much easier to make the corn dominant whiskeys. Rye is feisty, and it all the lovely notes that you get out of it from a rye spice, you sort of baking spice notes, any of that black pepper you get, it actually tends to give you that sensation that someone's sticking you in the back of the throat with a number 2 pencil. It's not the best taste. And so we were getting all this lovely flavor, but we weren't actually getting the texture we wanted. And one of the master blenders from one of the distillers we were working with really started pushing us to work with some of the corn components and sent us some good corn samples and said, try mixing this into your blend. And immediately it was just like putting rye spice on top of a nice bed of viscosity and oil and texture, and it spread the mouthfeel out. And it just immediately balanced the whiskey out. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't pour a whole lot, but the residual in the glass is just clinging, and you can still, the smell is just amazing.
So there's 25-year-old corn in here, right? I mean, there's old corn components in here. The really interesting thing about this particular blend is this is the only blend that we've made so far that used absolutely no new American oak. We use some Rechar American oak, but it's a 5 whiskey blend that has no new oak in it. And it's amazing how much the new wood is lovely, and you'll see immediately when we get into these next blends, we love working with new wood. But new wood tends to drown out the fruit and florality. It overpowers it so quickly, even a small fraction of it. And so, but the problem is it also rounds the whiskey out. It's such a fix-all for any problems that you have with your blend or any problems you have with your new make. Whenever you're making whiskey, new wood, it's just amazing how much it works. And so making a blend that actually wasn't kind of putting up bumpers and making it much easier by having new wood, we really had to kind of delicately make this thing fit the mouthfeel and the palate that we wanted. But the reward was all those interesting kind of honey notes and the bright sort of gentle fruit notes. You can't get those without time, and you can't really get those when you bombard it with new wood. And so this was batch 1 had more spice. It was more like a classic rye. Batch 3 is probably the most unique profile we made. And it was much more, we were trying to basically get to the outskirts of the profile you would expect from a rye without being really unrecognizable as a rye, but kind of just push the boundaries a little bit. And for me, I'm absolutely obsessed with batch 3. Batch 3 is one of my favorite whiskeys.
Oh,
I mean, I love all our whiskeys, but I really love batch 3
too,
for that reason.
But I really love batch 3. So the other thing we do in our group is we go around, we give everyone the opportunity to give their first impressions on things. So, hey guys, so why don't we real quick before we move? We had a good segue with the corn over to batch 4. But before we do that, let's see. Chris George, what did you think? What was your first impressions on 3?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Well, first all, I have to say, I think my nose is coming back from our sampling the other night, but
oh, good.
Really, as soon as I poured all these, I mean, just the aroma was just such a, I don't know. I want to wear it. I want to pour them all over me. It smells so good. But no, it's very, very smooth, very warm. I guess I sit there reading like you're talking, I'm reading the label and that, and I'm like, 114, this is going to melt your face off, but it really doesn't hit you like it's 114. I really like it.
Right. Awesome. Josh and Jackie, do you got any thoughts, first impressions?
I really liked it. I agree with Chris that it definitely doesn't hit you like I thought 114 proof would. Because when I first saw that was the lowest, I was a little nervous, but I actually really liked it. There's some sort of smell and flavor to it that I can't quite put my finger on, but I really like it.
Yeah, I really like the creaminess to it, to me.
Oh yeah, to me, that everybody knows in the group that the mouthfeel is the most important part for me. If it's thin, I don't care if it has a great flavor. If it's thin, it's not going to do it for me. Eric,
I got like a potpourri. Me and Bill were discussing it a little bit. It's like a floral, definitely very strong floral taste to it. Coming from some rye guys, that's. I love the proof though. It's smoother than anything I've had it with a rye that proof.
Oh yeah, and I think Nick, these are non-chill filtered, right?
Non-chill filtered. Also, we blend at. We're weird. We blend at strength. That's really unusual. Most master blenders are blending at 20%, and it allows you to be more sensitive on a nose perspective, but I don't know how they do it and retain the right mouthfeel. That just baffles me. I think you lose any semblance of what the actual texture is going to be like the second you water it down.
Right. Webb, any thoughts on batch 3?
Oh, it was the first drink of the night, so at first I thought it was a little. It came off a little hot, but then when I came back into it, it's gone. So I mean, it went down good. But yeah, definitely honey forward on there, and I agree with Joe with the mouthfeel. I was a little, worried at first, but no, it's excellent.
Yeah, the mouthfeel is what I noticed first.
Mhm.
Ash and Brian, any thoughts, first impressions on Glass 3? Oh, let me get your. No, I think you guys. I can't unmute you. You got to unmute yourself.
Got.
There you go.
I really liked this rye. I thought that it did have a lot of floral on the nose, and I also thought maybe some like raspberry, but flavor profile wise, I thought it was more of like an apple pie, buttery pie crust thing going with cinnamon, and I thought it was really good. I liked it a lot.
That sounds good to me. What about you, Brian?
Basically the same as Ashley said, but I got a lot of fruit forward on the nose, honey, a little bit of cereal, then a nice warm finish to it. It was really good.
Awesome. Landon, any thoughts, first impressions on Glass 3?
Yeah, only thing I will add is it's like a quick pinch in the beginning with that rye, but then it just quickly mellows out and gets very fruity and very honey. Yeah, it's a good. I like starting this one for the night. I think it's going to be good.
Perfect. Will, how about you? Anything else to add?
Aside from my initial notes, no. I'm still enjoying it.
Awesome. And Jeff and Carmen, what do you think? I know you guys have had batch 3 for a while now. So Jeff and Carmen were one of the early adopters in our group when we had it a while ago. So any other thoughts?
I mean, all of it's been pretty well covered. The butteriness, the sweetness, very fruit forward. Love it. You know how I feel about Found North. So it's just excellent.
Awesome.
I really liked it.
Perfect. All right. Well, yeah, let's move on to batch 4. I mean, now you had mentioned the corn, Nick. And now you're moving into more of like when I'm explaining these to people, I'm saying batch 3 is your typical kind of Kentucky rye as far as percentages go. And this, I call this the George T. Stagg killer. I mean, this has got all of the this has all of the on paper the stats of a stag. I mean, you're looking 80% corn, 19 rye, 1% barley. It is in Hungarian oak, not American, but it's non-chill filtered. Cast strength, 124.8 proof, 18 years old. I don't know how you get better stats than that.
So the crazy thing about this whiskey is, so it's 80% of the whiskey is the corn components. The corn components were 21 years in New American oak and 25 years in Hungarian oak. The 18 year, and the reason it's an 18-year age stated, was we actually used two different 18-year ryes in this. And that makes up the sort of rye component. And the ryes we had actually used a little bit of barley in the mash bill, and that's why there's a drop of barley in there. This was a really fun whiskey to make. Honest, I mean, these old corn components. Hungarian oak is a lot like American oak. The big difference is it's a little tighter grained, and it has a whole lot of wood sugar, like serious molassesy wood sugar, which is an absolute blast. And this was the successor to batch 2. And so you talk about kind of intentionality. The truth is, we didn't set out to make this style of whiskey at all. But we are, as a company, we are really, really firm believers. And we say this, we don't say it publicly maybe as often as we should. But for us, like, the number one rule of thumb is always let the whiskey lead us where we're going. And just like we always follow the whiskey. We want the whiskey to be good more than fitting into a category or fitting into the right stats or fitting into any of the right stuff. If the whiskey's good, we're going to be happy. And so what happened when we made batch 2, which was also 80-19-1 grain ratio, and it was 129.8 proof. When we made it, we were intending on making it a rye. But what happened was we were blending it, and as we were adding more and more corn, the whiskey was getting better and better. And then we hit this really kind of challenging moment for us where we were drinking this thing at more than 50-50 corn to rye. And of course, we no longer can legally call it a rye at that point. And we were like, this thing just keeps getting better the more we use the corn as the dominant component. And so we had a meeting and we said, all right, we're going to end up having to call this corn, this corn dominant whiskey. We're going to have to call it, just cask strength whiskey. It's not a Canadian whiskey. It's not it was bottled here. It's not a bourbon because of where it was made and some of the rules that it broke. So screw it. We're just going to call it cask strength whiskey. We're going to tell people what's in it. And we were like, we really weren't sure that that anyone would buy it, because we were afraid that people would be too wed to categories. And the idea of cask strength rye from Canada was not enough of a leap where we were like, okay, people will get that and they'll buy it, but will anybody drink batch 2? And then of course everyone went nuts for batch 2. And so we essentially had to remake it. But we wanted to, we didn't want to make the exact same thing. And so we made batch 4. And batch 4 ended up being one of the sort of serious crowd pleasers. We entered it into the John Barleycorn Awards, which is a very like American whiskey in terms of style and sort of how they value whiskey. It's a very sort of American whiskey driven awards. And they named batch 4 the best Canadian whiskey of the year, which was like, all right. And so we felt like we were really starting to get a feel for how do we take this Canadian style whiskey and really transition it into more of kind of a bourbon profile, but not exactly bourbon. The point wasn't to just recreate bourbon. The point was to make a rendition of whiskey that was very reminiscent of bourbon and hit the right notes, but had its own unique characteristics and had its own profile. And that's how we got to batch 4. You're muted.
You're right. I think you guys stumbled onto something here because you're doing something new. Nobody else is doing this, and it's creating a whole new product so Jess posted in the chat that we were actually on a vacation in Florida, and we went into a store I was already familiar with, like most bourbon nerds and hunters, trying to find something we couldn't get in Ohio, trying to find something cool, allocated. And they had some interesting stuff, but then the store owner was like, hey, because I told him kind of what I was looking for. He's like, have you ever heard of Fountain North? And I was like, no, I've never heard of that. And then he showed me these bottles, and it was batch 3 and 4. And I just saw a 17 and 18 year age statement, cask strength. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's $400. And it was like $129. And I was like, what? And we bought it. And I think you're right. I think people just need to try it. And our minds were blown. And then we took it to a bottle share. And yeah.
Which store was it? Do you remember?
Regency Liquor, just north of in Orlando, Regency.
Great. Yeah, they're great. Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah. Joe turned me on to Found North at that bottle share. And then that night, both me and Jeff bought a bottle of it. I remember it. Since then, I've also bought another bottle of the batch 4.
Right. Nick,
it's got such a great texture on the mouth. It's incredible. It's one of my favorites of my entire.
So Nick, I've just finished bottle 4. I've got a 5th one that I've been holding on to in case for a gift, and I don't want to get rid of it because it's getting harder and harder to find. I think the last time I found it was like up to $189 plus shipping, and it's hard to get stuff in Ohio.
Wow.
So it is by far my favorite whiskey. I know it's not a bourbon, but it's hands down my number 1. I love this stuff.
Thank you, man. That's really nice.
So, and then I think you guys saw my comments on about Seal Box, right? Because Seal Box is starting to carry them, so that's a place. And then Jess in the comments said, so we did the bottle share, got some people interested, and then I sent a blind flight to Josh and Aaron from Stuff and Whiskey, and that blew Josh's mind because I can't remember if he told you the story when you were on the live stream with him, but I had your batch 3 and 4, and then I had a 14 and a half year Knob Creek store pick. And then I had there was something else. Maybe it was Wild Turkey Decades or something.
He told the story, yeah.
And he picked your 2 first and second place out of 3 high-aged, high-strength Kentucky whiskeys.
That's awesome.
Blew his mind. He couldn't believe it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think, going back to we're often told not to talk too much about pricing and things like that. And it's funny because there's almost an attitude of, well, you should price it really high, right? Like, well, price it really high because that indicates that it's good. And I don't get, and maybe this is just because I started my career in whiskey in retail. And when you're in retail, what you really want to deliver to customers is good value, right? It's not just good whiskey. Like, right. There's great whiskey that costs $1,000, but guess what? There's even better whiskey that costs $100. And as much as you want to make a big sale and always be, and that's obviously a driving force. You actually do much better at the retail level if you get people to come back and you build a reputation of like, hey, this guy knows the good stuff at the right price. And so for us, one of the big draws was, honestly, I love Kentucky whiskey. I love bourbon. I love American ryes. But man, we are really starting to see some price inflation where it's like the good stuff. If you're finding it for $100, it could be 4 or 5 years old. And it's like, whew. So for us, we've always said we'd rather have to explain the category and explain the process and have really good whiskey at just an outrageously good price than have the right category, but have whatever the quality of whiskey might be at an astronomically high price. It's just, and so
yeah,
I don't see how
anybody could. Yeah, I don't see how anybody could not be willing to at least try it.
Yeah.
When you're looking at these age statements at cask strength, non-chill filtered for the price, that's why we were shocked when we saw it. So what about anybody else in the group? Anybody have any thoughts or comments on batch 4? Just chime in.
I want to find some Hungarian staves so I can put in my infinity bottle. I see what you're saying. It definitely has a different. It's definitely hotter, but I've never. Yeah, I think I have a new favorite right here. This I can't even put it into words, but it's definitely a different flavor. And I mean, it's hot, it's smooth, it's got a fruity finish, and it's smooth. I mean, it's phenomenal.
Weight. We talk about weight. It has weight, right? It can be both heavy and still have a kind of a clean palate, right? It can still have that heat and warmth, but still taste clean.
I agree. I just told Brian, it almost brought a tear to my eye. It is so good, and I'm not trying to be corny. I freaking love it. It's great, but it's the texture. I almost want to chew it. It's there. It's everything. I love it. Nice.
Yep. What'd you think, Will?
So please don't take this the wrong way. This is meant as a wonderful thing. It's everything I've ever hoped any cinnamon flavored whiskey would taste like. The first thing that hit me in the face was just a really spicy cinnamon note, and then that just kind of revealed and let way out to like a butter crust type thing.
It's funny that you say that because Scott was sitting over here and we were muted. He leans over and he goes, Nick loves cinnamon. He leans over and goes, what kind of honey do they use in this? I'm like, none. It's not a flavored. That's just whiskey. He's like, what?
Yeah, it punched me in the face though.
Yeah.
It's
you
still
get suckered in.
like 5 minutes after I took a sip of it. It was delicious. So good. Christmas come early.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Landon?
Yeah, just like I said, it's my favorite bottle of anything that I have. The texture and the mouthfeel really, excuse me, hits it home for me. It's a nice spice for it. I do get the cinnamon notes, but a nice, it's very smooth. I can really sip on it all night, and it's got a nice warm hug to it as well.
So I know you guys have had it before. Eric, had you had either of these before? Is this your first time with batch?
Yeah, I haven't touched this stuff before.
What did you think about batch 4?
Yeah, it can hang. I like it. I mean, with
And
Thanksgiving,
this is Eric's excited face.
with Thanksgiving coming up, it makes me. I mean, baked goods. I get a lot of like baked like breads and pie, and I got the fruit, the cherries, the up front. It's pretty sweet, and yeah, you'll feel it at the end, but I like it.
Nice. Chris, anything to add? Webb?
Nope, nothing that everybody hasn't already said. I mean, it's really damn good. And that's all I got.
That's awesome. What about you, Josh and Jackie?
Yeah, I really like the finish on it. It just kind of lingers and it changes. It's really good.
Yeah, I just feel like it just kept going. Definitely hotter than the first one, but it's still pretty good. It definitely lingers.
Okay. Well, Nick, I got to be honest. I love 3 and 4, but 5 is the one I've been looking forward to. I've held out. I haven't tried it. I watched Josh and Aaron's live stream. I didn't try it. I held out, and I'm really looking forward to 5. And can you kind of talk to us about, after your success with batch 1 and 2, and rolling out 3 and 4 real similar, what was your
5?
What was your vision? What was leading you to get into 5?
So
try it.
Yeah, I mean, full disclosure, I think 5's my favorite thing we've made, including all 18 single barrels we've made, all our batches. When we found this component, which is the 8 year. So you guys will see it's 8 year age stated, which is the youngest component we've worked with. When we found this component, it was very much an instance of don't screw it up. With the other whiskeys we've made, it's very much a process of like, all right, we have this, we're going to build around it. Let's construct this whole whiskey. We've got this idea in our head. Let's add a little of this. It's very much the kind of the mad scientists in their lab brewing up some witch's brew and like getting really deep in it. With batch 5, it was like, we have this unbelievable component, and it just needs to be rounded, and it just needs to be shaped, and it just needs to be laid down on this big, fatty, beautiful corn component, this really old 21-year-old corn that was also aged ex-bourbon, transferred into new American oak for 9 years, or I think it was 8 years and 10 months. And we were so excited about this whiskey. And this was, again, you want to talk about like sort of letting the whiskey lead the way, and ignoring the stats, because obviously by law, we have to call it an 8 year. Now we've made it really clear that it's 73% 21-year corn, 27% 8-year-old wheat. So, some people talk about the average age, whatever. The point is, like, we just absolutely loved this 8 year, and we wanted to construct an entire whiskey around it. And it fit nicely into what we were doing, because the single barrel that we released, the first batch of single barrels that we released were rye whiskeys. So we felt like, all right, we went rye corn, and then we did a rye for the single barrel. So batch 5, we felt comfortable saying, all right, we can introduce our first ever sort of wheated expression, right? That's got the big wheat component in it. And then we'll make 6 when we get to it. 6 is the sort of successor to 2 and 4. And honestly, like we talk about mouthfeel, the wheat itself had unbelievable mouthfeel. And then when we combined it with the old corn, the mouthfeel for me, it's like, I hate saying a whiskey is perfect, but I will say this aspect of the whiskey was as good as I feel like we'll ever make. It was just perfect for us.
Yeah. What I love is it's bringing the wheat component for me is bringing, and I think you mentioned it last time, is that chocolatiness to it, which what I loved about batch 3 was how much honey and fruit there was, but then going a little darker and getting those chocolate notes was phenomenal. And then when you're talking about, the one thing that stuck out to me, when you're talking about the 8-year age statement, obviously to be legal, right? But we know it's the 21 years in there, the corn. But think about from Kentucky. If you had an 8-year age stated Kentucky wheated bourbon, right? Like that's going to demand some attention, having an 8-year age statement, especially in a time like now where age statements are either being dropped or they're getting lower.
Yep.
So an 8-year wheated component is that's not anything to be shameful about. That's
no.
pretty darn good.
No, but when you compare it to, we released 2 16 years, a
Right.
17-year, an 18-year, an 8-year, and then a 17-year again. Yet there's kind of a little bit of like, what's this weird kind of black sheep whiskey that these guys are making? But you're right. You make a really good point. And for us, honestly, it's the oldest wheat component we've gotten our hands on. We've been looking at 3-year-old wheats. We've been looking at really young wheat pretty much everywhere. There just isn't a lot of it. And I see Jess put into the comments here, sort of creamy, excellent mouthfeel. The creaminess of it was like, it was Irish butter, it was mint, it was, but like full fat cream. And that's, it's really fun. And this thing is, guys, this is 116.2 proof.
Mm-hmm.
This is
really
blowing my mind.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
this is at 100.
realistic because it's got with the viscosity, and I like to refer to as like the Pop Rocks tingle, right? Like that little spice tingle.
Mm-hmm.
It would read to me, double blind, that might be 105, 108, 110 at the most, but yeah, getting up there 116.2, it would expect it to be a little spicier, like all of them, right? Like I wouldn't expect any of these to be, except for 4. 4 does give you that nice good punch. 3 doesn't, but that chocolate component from the wheat is fantastic. Well, what do you guys think? Chris George, what do you think? I mean, this was my first time trying it. I know it's yours.
Oh yeah, all these are my first times. Definitely the way it finishes, that smooth vanilla, but right before that, a real strong brown sugar, burnt butter. When you said butter, I'm like, yep, there it is. That's what I was trying to think of. Kind of like that yellow cake batter's been in it, I just, yeah, it's definitely different with wheat. What's that?
Yeah, cake batter. Uh-huh.
Yeah, definitely different with the wheat, but not taking over in the top spot though. Number 2.
Oh, Jackie, what did you have? You got something to say.
Oh, I'm saying that's number 1. As soon as I smelt it, I got straight brownie. Smelled amazing. Really liked it. Maybe like a cookie cake, sugar, sweet, my type of whiskey. We both agreed that we need to get our hands on one of these bottles.
It's coming out soon on Sealbox, right?
It's coming. Sealbox is taking delivery right now. So as soon as they can turn it around,
right.
Yeah, it should the next week or 2. Yeah.
Eric, what did you think? Do you have any first impressions on batch 5?
I got a odd like black licorice scent at first, but I definitely get the chocolate now. and for the taste, it's rib sticking. I mean, this is the legs on this glass are impressive.
Rib sticking, I like that.
Rib stick, yeah, like good barbecue. Okay, so now Jeff Carmen. So Jeff, you have this is your first time trying batch 5, obviously, right?
Yes,
What do you think now?
it's outstanding. I believe it or not, I got cotton candy from the aroma at first.
Okay.
Loved it. I'm out there trying to find it. Nobody will ship to Ohio, and most people don't have it yet. So,
Well, I'm excited about Seal Box getting it. I'm looking forward to that.
Seal box.
Will, what about you? What do you got thoughts on batch 5?
So after the last 2, I got my nose down in it, and I didn't immediately get anything. But then I tasted it, and like vanilla custard, a little bit of clove with the numbing. It just kept going and going and going, and it. I'd share my screen. I'm literally sitting at Seal Box on my right-hand screen.
refresh. Come on. Landon, this is your first time trying batch 5 also. You've had some of the other stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, this is like it gets on your tongue and then it just melts on your tongue. It just is there a while. I take a drink of water and then it's still there. You know, I mean, it is incredible. It's like when someone said Pop Rocks, it's kind of like that on like the back of your tongue a little bit, a little tangy, a little spicy. But it's it's great. Yeah, really good.
Awesome. Ash, Brian, what do you think batch 5?
Nose, it was a lot of sugar cookie, followed a little bit of honey, and then yeah, like you said, it was chocolate. We grow some mint. We have chocolate mint that we grow for mojitos, and it tasted just like that.
I agree. I got like a spearmint, not Brian said chocolate mint, and I totally agree with that. It almost has like a buttery suede mouthfeel. I don't know. I think that's the best way I can explain it. And I really, yeah.
You don't need any other explanation. That gives it to you right there.
Licking a belt.
We're 3 for 3. I like them all. It's delicious. Fabulous.
So Chris Webb had to run off screen for a second. Bill, we got you up in here. What did you think about batch 5?
I like it, and you know me, I don't really do a ton of bourbons, but this is really good. It's nice and thick. The proof keeps the tingle going. It's got a nice sweetness up front, and the bloom on your tongue in your mouth is really nice. Like feels like it's got some spice because of that bloom.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But the mouthfeel is the best. I think it's so thick. It's nice and viscous.
So now Nick, Bill's our rye guy. He's a big time rye guy. Bill, what did you think? I want to know what you thought about batch 3.
I thought 3 was good. I think 4 is a lot better.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
3 is good. 3, I need to try more because it's got so much going on. I finished the sample bottle, so I need some more because it has so much stuff going on. Each time I tried it, there was something else I think I found. So
awesome.
I'm gonna have to try it again.
All right. Well, Nick, we're going into the single barrel now, and this is a little different, right? I think you told me you got something a little special planned for this. So if you could kind of tell us what this is about, what you guys have plans for it. And then while you're doing that also, and we're all tasting it and trying it, can you also give us a little more feel of Found North, like you guys? Is it just the two of you? Like, what's your company structure look like as far as like, do you have a team around you? Is it just you guys? Like, and what are your plans? Where are you going with this?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I get a lot of encouragement from the guys and our whole team to be the quote unquote head blender and kind of be out talking to folks about our whiskey. But honestly, like, we have the best team. We don't make this whiskey. We have no prayer of making this whiskey without our whole team. We've had the craziest thing about this whole brand was we got our first sample of rye in, I think it was April or maybe May of 2020, right? And so you're talking prime COVID. None of us were in the same room at any point while we were developing these whiskeys. We had a 4-person team at that time. We had to do all of it by video chat, just going through, what do you think? Was this? How about this? Okay, I'm sending you something, like, what do you think? You know, and we had a really gritty, and we had a really cool team. And the team's grown a little bit. And I have to shout out my brother. He's the one who is kind of the king at finding all of these whiskeys. You'd think you wouldn't realize how hard it is to locate and get people to send you samples of really interesting whiskeys. And it doesn't matter whether it's the US or Canada. And then our we call him our director of whiskey innovation, is Sammy Karachi, and he's been with the team from day one, and he thinks about flavors in a way that's just really, really outside the norm. It's working with him is like the absolute greatest blessing. Like he really considers whiskey in a way that constantly astounds me. And I get the credit, but it's ridiculous because I really only deserve a piece of the credit. And these guys deserve the majority of it. And then we have Phil on our team. Phil's on our QC team, quality control. He has a spirits background as well, and has just a phenomenal palate. So the sort of the process for us is usually Sammy is working with these components, Zach's hunting them out, and then Sammy and I then sort of start fine tuning the ideas into more of, okay, this is exactly what we want the blend to look like. And then we go back out to the rest of our team and say, okay, test them blind. We do so many blind tests where it's basically, we'll take other people's brands and mix them in there and make sure that, like, people are liking ours relative to what we're developing. And that's really been our process. In terms of where we're going, our intention is, people ask us all the time, the two questions we get all the time are you going to build a distillery? I wouldn't rule it out, but I'm not that interested in building a distillery, to be completely honest. Building a distillery is a crapshoot. There are so many famous stories of, let's take Heaven Hill. When Heaven Hill burnt down, go look at some of the old interviews of Noe and those guys trying to rebuild the distillery. They've got the exact blueprints. They're building it in the same place. You know, it's how could it possibly make completely different whiskey? But as a lot of us know, pre-Heaven Hill, pre-Fire Heaven Hill is worth a lot more than post-Fire Heaven Hill. And it's like, why? Well, because building a distillery with any real control over what your product actually is going to taste like is incredibly difficult. And there's such good liquid that's out there that we can blend and we can form into things that we find really interesting and really innovative. There's no time. We don't have the time to do it. We're too busy making fun things. I honestly, that's how I feel.
I'll tell you what, I would challenge anybody to, when you're talking about so much good liquid out there that you guys can make new, interesting, awesome things. I challenge anybody to go out there and find any whiskeys that taste like this, because they're not going to do it. They're not going to be able to. And when you're talking about going to your team and blinding your whiskeys and put it up together, if you ever decide to outsource that, I think you have a lot of willing participants here. So
actually, particularly when we were developing the first whiskeys, we had some folks who were friends of ours who had been sort of following us when we were just brand ambassadors and we were just doing some sort of brand education work with other people's products who kind of were with us really early on. And we went to them and we blinded them. We put in, I shouldn't say what other brands we put in, but the obvious ones. And we put it in, we put ours in. And it was tough. It was tough going when we were first working on it. And you'd blind people on 5 whiskeys and one of yours would be in there and it would finish like 4th, and we'd be like, damn it. Okay. We got to go back to the drawing board and make this better. I think we've gotten to the point where we feel really confident with what we're making. We've gotten a lot better at. I think batch 1 literally was about 9 months of development, and I'd say now batches take us 3 to 4 weeks to really fine tune. So we've gotten a lot faster.
Yeah, you got a good process going because it's been
tough. So let's talk about the single barrel. Yeah.
Tell us tell us your plans for this, because the nose on this is just out of this world.
Ridiculous. This is fun. This is a really fun whiskey. So we wanted a single barrel program, right? I mean, I was picking barrels when I was at Gordon's in Boston, and we'd go down to Kentucky and we'd pick barrels, and I think it was the coolest for me professionally. Like, it was my favorite thing I did. I think barrel picking, being able to put your stamp on a whiskey, being involved in the process, and getting to have your palate reflected to a group or to a community, and having them sort of buy into that. I think it's one of the most exciting things possible. I really do. I think it's the coolest aspect of whiskey is wrapping consumers into the process. It's like, imagine, I don't know. No, I'll get into weird analogies if you let me go. So I won't. But basically, for us, the challenge, of course, was we're making blends, right? So, like, we can't take one of these components and just take a barrel of it and make it a Found North single barrel. It wouldn't feel like it was ours, because we really are blenders, and that's what we believe in. But additionally, it doesn't optimize the whiskey at all. That's not how you make Canadian whiskey. It's just you can do it with bourbon and you can do it with American rye, because all of the decision-making process for the way the whiskey is going to taste happens in the first 2 weeks, right? With what yeast and what wood and where you put it. That's basically it. With Canadian, so much of the process happens at the end based on the blending and based on creating the ratios. How do you mix that with a barrel program? And so what we did was we made a blend back in December of last year. And we blended 50% 12-year-old rye with 20% 19-year-old rye and 30% 21-year-old corn. So 3 whiskey blend, 50-12, 20-19, 30-21. So that the rye components had a little bit of barley in them. So we ended up at a grain ratio of 66. It was 66-34. So 66% rye, 30% corn, 4% malted barley. And the tricky thing was, we knew we were going to take that blend and then recask it into a bunch of different casks, into a bunch of different barrels, different barrel types. And the idea was, okay, these will then end up all becoming disparate from a flavor standpoint. They're in different wood types. They're in different parts of the warehouse. They're going to end up developing their own unique flavor. But on top of that, those single barrels are all very much one of one. There isn't, it's not like bourbon brand X where you're buying a single barrel of it, but you can go to the store and buy something that tastes just like that, right? Like, no, this brand, this this whiskey doesn't exist on shelves in retailers. It is literally a one-of-one whiskey. And we thought that captured kind of the ephemeral magic of barrel picking. And so we developed this blend, recast it. The tricky part was you don't get to, when you're blending the batches, you get to just say, okay, this is perfect how it is. I'm going to fine tune it, bottle it. And it tastes just like the way you expect it to. With the single barrel program, we had to create a blend and create space for more wood. So when we developed the initial blend, we didn't think of that blend as, hey, this is a done, complete whiskey. We said this whiskey has got everything, but it needs a little bit more wood. It needs a little bit more influence from a different barrel type. And that became our barrel program. And so we've been releasing, and you're gonna see more of them coming out. We've been releasing all of these different single barrels as we define it. And so the one you guys have in your glass is this is a really special barrel. This was our biggest barrel. This is a sherry butt. So this has been in a sherry butt for just under a year. And a sherry butt is a 500 liter plus barrel that had held sherry, Pedro Jimenez sherry. And so unlike sherry barrels, which are maybe 250 liters or smaller, this thing ages really slow and steady. And if you've ever had sort of rye that's been aged in sherry or rye that's been aged in port, port's is an unbelievably good finishing cask for rye. The combination of the sweetness and the fat that you get from the barrel combined with the intensity of rye spice, they tend to marry incredibly well. This has been one of our absolute favorite barrels that we did, and we're gonna release it as a special release.
Nice. And that's going to be for this holiday, right?
The goal is to get it released for this holiday. We're getting close to this holiday, and logistics have been a nightmare. It will happen this winter. Let's say that for certain. My hope is to get it in before the true sort of holiday season, New Year's, Christmas, and the other lovely holidays that are all in that December month. So we're trying to get it in that time frame. If it doesn't happen, it'll land in January. That's for damn sure.
Well, I'll tell you what, I personally have not been a big fan of sherry finish stuff. I do like port finish, rum finish. Sherry finish I've not been a huge fan of. But this one, because sometimes on sherry finish, I get some astringency. I get some of the like tannic bitter notes, right? This, I get none of that. And I really like it a lot. But again, like I say, when we're doing our blind flight nights, it really doesn't matter what I think. I want to know what everybody else thinks. And this is going to be one of your special releases, one of your single barrels. Let's go around the room real quick. Bill, what do you think? Give us your thoughts on the sherry finish single barrel.
So initially I said it smells like cake frosting. It smelled so sweet. I couldn't believe it when I stuck my nose down in the glass. And then took a baby sip, and it's that huge sherry finish, like going to communion. It was so strong, but it was so good. And I thought it's like a huge grape flavor, like almost grape soda. I mean, it's so grapey initially. I was blown away by how much of that finish has shown through.
Yeah, but without getting that, like I said, that like almost vinegary astringency that sometimes a sherry finish can get. And I think it's unbelievable. Ash and Brian, what did you think?
Sorry. Okay, so I think my big tasting note was like sugar plums, like spiced sugar plums. We definitely get a lot of the fruit flavor on the nose and on the mouth, and it's delicious. I really liked it a lot. I could definitely see putting it out for the holidays.
Oh yeah. Brian?
It tasted like Christmas.
That's perfect, man. That's perfect. I hope you
agree with Bill. A lot of grape, but then it was real botanical at the end. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Nice. Landon, I know you were waiting to try this one. What did you think about it?
Yeah, I'm curious. So I'm just so you had the single barrel that you released, but then you took it and then you re-barreled it in the sherry cask finish, correct?
So we did a blend and then we rebarreled it into the sherry cask, and that is our quote unquote single barrel.
Okay. Well, is the single barrel that you released the sherry cask one as well, or was the separate?
No. The first one we released was an ex bourbon that tasted like a marshmallow. It was, it was a new oak that just tasted like a marshmallow. That was a fun whiskey.
Yeah.
So Nick, and that was the same blend. So basically, you took your blend that wasn't quite ready yet, and some of it you put into the sherry butt, some of it you put into the new oak, and that's how you got your different barrels.
We did, yeah. So we did a sherry butt, a sherry barrel. We did a port barrel. We did 2 different Calvados casks. We did Sauterne. We did Muscat. We did 5 different new oaks in with different char levels. We did a few others. We've done a few others. I've drank too much with you to remember all of them.
So that's awesome. So my takeaway from that is, if there was, let's just say, I don't know, somewhere across America, a whiskey society that wanted to do a single barrel pick with you guys, there's a lot of cool stuff.
There's a lot of cool stuff, and we denoted these as quote unquote season 1. And the idea was the bottle is actually this sort of short little stumpy bottle. You can see we got great color out of this thing. And we each time we do a release of single barrels, it will be a different blend. And so it was like, how do we indicate, okay, this is the first blend we did, barrel 1, right? So we said, all right, it'll be season 1, barrel 1. And so there'll be season 1, barrel 1 through 18, right? But then when we do the next release, it'll be a completely new formula and a new blend and new ages. And so the idea is, look, I think the most exciting thing about picking a single barrel is feeling that your barrel is unique. When you pull a barrel from a company that's releasing 100 barrels and it's always the same thing, it's hard to create that much differentiation. But for us, we like the idea of like, no. If you buy a single barrel from us, this is going to taste only like it, right? It's not going to taste like the rest of our product. We're never going to release something that's, the same thing but better. That's not going to happen. We're essentially going to do this one, and then the next round, it's a whole new round of flavor profiles. It's a whole new round of interesting things.
That's awesome. Will, what did you think about this sherry butt finish single barrel?
So I like what you said. It tasted like nothing I've ever tasted before. On the nose, I got fruits, apricots, Queen Anne cherries, dried cranberries, a little bit of toasted wood, maybe some like toasted walnuts.
Yep.
And on the tongue, star anise, tarragon, brown butter, roasted golden beets. Things that I never thought I'd ever assign to a whiskey. And it just keeps going.
That's awesome. Jeff, Carmen. Jeff, I know you were looking forward to trying this one too. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not much of a, when they age them into the different wine barrels and that, but this was excellent. I'm with Bill, man. I got a lot of cake frosting on that aroma. And then the sweetness following through all that, the oily, I loved it. It's very good. I'm hoping we'll be able to find it.
Me too. Eric, what about you? What did you think?
I got like a acidic combination of cranberry sauce and sweet tarts. Like when I just let it sit in my mouth, and then on the finish, I get like a lot of like sweet tart candy.
Yeah, I can see that. Awesome. Josh, Jackie, any thoughts on the single barrel?
It's got a lot of a jam, a grape jam.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, as soon as he said that, it's definitely just straight grape jelly.
That's awesome. I know that's what I've loved about it, and I didn't get any of that bitterness. I love that. Chris, what did you think?
I agree. I've never had a whiskey or bourbon that was aged in different types of wine barrels, so this is very new to me. But there was something I couldn't place, and as soon as you guys said frosting, I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm smelling, like buttercream. But definitely reminds me of when I used to make wine. The must, when you crack open that the bucket, and then you'd have to squeeze that bag and get all that juice out of the straining bag. I picked up on the must, probably the most.
Nice. Scott, I know it sounded like you had a definite reaction when you tried anything.
As soon as I tasted it, I was like, oh my, this tastes like thick caramel going up my nose right now.
Yeah.
And then tasted it, and I was just like, oh, it's by far my favorite one that we've tasted so far. Love it.
That's awesome.
I'm hosting Thanksgiving this year, so I'm hoping I get a bottle somehow. Bring it to everybody.
Awesome. Yeah, what do we got going on in the chat over here? We got something going on in the chat.
Yeah, the question was, is this going to be a mailing list release? And the answer is yes. We'll basically announce this through our mailing list, and that's how you'll get access to it.
Yeah. So I know myself, Landon, Jeff are all on the mailing list, but for the rest of you, if you're not, go to the website, just Google Found North Whiskey, go to the website, sign up for the mailing list. Cause I was waiting. Like right when the last release, I was waiting for.
Don't miss your drop.
Yeah.
I was so thankful when I emailed, I think your brother, Nick, that you had an extra one. I was just very thankful for that. So, yeah.
So I'm glad you brought that up, Landon, because like when we had Nick on here, everybody, I wanted just like to thank him and to give a shout out to the whole company, because like Landon just missed it because it sold out quick. Nick, how long did it sold out quick?
12 minutes.
12 minutes sold out. And he was a little bit late. I had a little snafu with the order and shipping, and the customer service was above and beyond what would be required. And it was really nice to see. Thank you for that.
Landon got lucky. We had a malfunction with the we had a limit one per customer, and the program wasn't actually working. And so in the email and through all the promotion, we said, basically this is limit one per customer. If we get more orders, if we have orders that have more than one bottle, we're going to cancel it, and we're going to basically sell you one bottle, and then we'll sell the other bottle to somebody else. And Landon was the first person to email us. And so we had like one or two customers who ordered more than one bottle, and we brought it down to one per customer. And so Landon was one of the lucky ones where it was just like, oh, hey, we happen to, thanks for reaching out. Here it is.
But that's the thing is though, like, I mean, you look at other companies, other products, they didn't have to do that. Right. So the fact to go the extra mile to take care of them was pretty awesome. But
I'm extremely grateful. Really am. I haven't even cracked it yet. I'm kind of like, it's on my
baby.
Looking at it one day, I will open it and try it. Just like I cherish it. Like send them. I've
already cracked it. It's well worth it.
Yeah.
But I know it is a school night. We got one more to get to, so I don't want to delay anybody. Nick, why don't you take us into batch 6?
Okay, everybody, put your lead drinking boots on. This bad boy is 128.2 proof. This is the successor to batch 4 and batch 2. We actually used a huge chunk of this whiskey was the same foundational. It was the same foundational whiskey that we used for batch 2. Batch 2 had this unbelievably cool whiskey that had been aged in ex-bourbon and transferred into New Oak for 7 years. We aged it for another 20 months and then built a whiskey around it. The corn component is higher. It's 87% corn, 12% rye, 1% malted barley. It is the thunderstorm of our whiskeys. It is definitely, there's definitely a reason why I had us sort of warm up with everything before we went to this. But this was for us kind of the epitome of the heavy, almost popcorn, big caramel bomb that you can get from using this super overaged whiskeys from Canada. The whiskeys range from 17 to 26 years old. It was a 5 whiskey blend, and we found a profile that we really like with 2 and 4, and we're just continuing to explore what we can do with this. And we absolutely, like, you guys are in Ohio. You're in Ohio, so you know what I'm talking about. I don't know where everybody else is exactly, but up here in New England, the winter can get a little feisty. February can be a dark and dreary time. Fireplace goes a long way. A whiskey like this will take you even further. So I'm delighted for you guys to try this. This is one of my favorite whiskeys we've made, and it's like drinking syrup. I mean, it is just like,
so it is,
so
and it is thick. And I'll tell you what, it is 1.7% ABV, higher than batch 4, but I think drinks more approachable than batch 4. Batch 4 was really aggressive up front, where I think batch 6, the bloom, right? It like builds slower and it's more aggressive on the back end, which I actually like better. But when I said batch 4 was a George T. Stagg killer, no, batch 6 is a George T. Stagg killer. And I hope that trends and goes viral or whatever, because this is it. People need to know about this.
I think I found a new favorite.
Yeah. Oh,
Standing.
so even Jess in the chat said this is her favorite so far.
This is stupid good. It's like a maple syrup bomb. Yeah.
My favorite one.
Yeah.
Little drying, some toasted oak, cinnamon, cloves, like honey syrup. So for as alcoholic as it is, it does not punch you. It just says, please, just drink more.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, we were just talking about in the car, and I was listening to Bourbon Pursuit on the way drive down here, and some other podcasts, and they were talking about hunting allocated whiskey and camping out and that kind of stuff. And I'll tell you what, I'm glad we don't have to camp out for this. But this is one I probably would be happy camping out for.
Yeah.
I don't know how you guys are on adding even just 2 or 3 drops of water to this, to whiskey. This one is, if you have a water dropper on hand, the way it just blossoms from those like we really enjoyed the caramel and the molasses aspect of 2 and 4, but we wanted to just basically pile on. It was like, we're not holding back at all. Let's make this as thick as possible. And it's wild what happens when you add a few drops of water and all of that starts to emerge even more. And you're just, it also releases a little bit of the fruit quality. I don't always, and honestly, I haven't done it with any other whiskey tonight, but I love adding a little water to this and seeing what happens.
Oh, you're right. I don't generally, even like, normally I'm leading the tasting, right? But like, even if I'm somewhere, like, especially if we're down in Kentucky doing the Bourbon Trail and I'm at a tasting and they're like, okay, now we're going to add water. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. But wow, it certainly does not hurt this whiskey. That's for sure.
No.
I mean, that's just amazing. You got, your team is just, knocking it out of the park.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
When you said thunderstorm, Nick, it's like you're sitting outside watching a thunderstorm approach you on the horizon. and then it just builds and builds. It's just an explosion. It really is. It's incredible. I had to go between this one and batch 4 to kind of see which one I would prefer over the other, but yeah, it's definitely a great building point off of batch 4.
Yeah, I mean, I saw nothing wrong with batch 4. Just blew my mind. I still remember the first time tasting these, and it was like, I can't believe whiskey could taste like this. And 6 is, I think, even better than 4. But let's go around. Chris, George, what do you think? Batch 6.
I'm kind of torn. I had to do the same thing like Landon said. I had to go back and check 4, and hope I don't offend anybody, or at least a certain somebody. I think I'm going to do a little mix between the two and see what it comes out like.
Do it. I do it all the time.
Josh, Jackie, what did you guys think?
I really liked it. I'm surprised that with it being so high proof that I actually liked it.
Nice.
Yeah, I think
drank great.
Joe said Stag Killer. By far, I would take this over Stag any day.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how anybody could argue that.
No.
Eric, what do you think?
Pepper, leather, molasses. I have an Obtainium hazmat bottle, and this is better than that. And I mean, that drank pretty smooth for about 140, and this was better for sure.
Wow, nice. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Obtainium too. I just traveling through Knoxville. Actually, Jess doesn't know this. She's going to find out right now. I found one of the 27-year-old 150 proof Obtainiums and picked one of those up.
Yeah, I think mine was 26.
Yeah, but that 27-year-old, 78% ABV was cheaper than the Crown Royal 18-year-old. So I said, yes, thank you. I'll take the Obtainium. Ash and Brian, what did you think about batch 6? Oh, and there's Jess messaging me.
She commenting already.
Yeah.
I thought it was really good. It was my favorite one out of the 5 here. Just lots of caramel, lots of toffee. It was really good. Good mouth coating. It was excellent.
I agree. I said maple syrup before. I'm going to stick to that. I agree. Nice leather, dry finish. It hits all the notes I like. And I don't know which one I like better between this one and batch 4. And I don't want to decide right now.
That's why you just get them all.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Will, what did you think about batch 6? Two thumbs up. All right.
I very much enjoyed it. So I got home from work a bit late because I stopped to pick up the turkey for Saturday's festivities. And my reference, because I saw that there was a lot of rye and north, I felt, okay, Canadian rye. I went down and I grabbed the 6-year malted rye from New Riff that I picked up when we did our pick there. And while it's tasty, it doesn't have any of the interesting characters that any of these have. I like them all, and that's a problem.
That's perfect. Jeff, Carmen, I know this is your first time with 6. What did you think?
It's my new favorite, bud. I'm telling you.
Wow.
And I'm a high proof guy. I love the higher proof stuff. And this drank very well for a high proof, and the flavor is just outstanding.
Nice.
For the higher proof, I actually liked it. And when I added the water, it didn't water it down too much. It just gave it more flavor.
Right.
Doesn't fall apart.
Yeah.
It doesn't fall apart, right? Doesn't get thin on you. Bill, what did you think?
At first, it kind of reminded me of that IW Harper we had the other day. Kind of short and flat, but as I keep taking more sips and I put some water in it, it got a little more interesting. But good Lord, is it thick? I mean, it is thick, and it's got some sweetness. I'm not sure. I tried 4 with it. I'm not sure which one I like. I think maybe 4 beats it for me.
Okay.
But it's good. It is good.
Awesome. Well, that's what I was hoping. I was really hoping everyone would have a real positive experience. And then I know we had a couple of people watching on YouTube. Hopefully, as people see the replay of this, get interested in these whiskeys. We're right at about an hour and a half, Nick. I can't thank you enough for agreeing to take time out of your schedule to meet with us, to send us some samples. It means a lot to me running the group, but it means a lot to me because I think you're doing fantastic stuff. I love your whiskeys, and it makes me excited to want to share with other people. So,
oh man,
no,
thank you for having me. It's interesting because I do. You can imagine I do a lot of tastings, and I meet a lot of people who drink whiskey, and you can get a vibe for a group the more you do it. And I will tell you, this was one of the more gratifying tastings I've done in a long time, particularly in terms of when we're making a whiskey, you have something in mind, right? You're like, all right, we really want this to taste this way, and we really want we're building around this flavor, and we're building around this profile. And so when you then pour the whiskeys, a lot of times you hear nonsensical crap come back to you about how it tastes, right? And you're just like, all right, well, that's just the way it is. And so to pour for a group that comes back and starts saying, hey man, I'm really getting honey on batch 3. I'm really getting this apricot and this dried fruit on the sherry cask. I'm really getting leather on batch 6. I'm getting the molasses and the maple syrup on batch 4. It's like, oh God, that was literally what we're trying to do. And I don't always put too much stock in tasting notes because whiskey is such a subjective and experiential thing. And I think that's really sacred. But it is unbelievably gratifying to hear people be both excited, but also like nail exactly what we were going for. So thank you guys so much for really just such a thoughtful evening. It was awesome.
We're building a good group here. We've done 22 virtual blind flights this year.
Wow.
And those are all double blinds for our group. So we did 22 of them this year. And I watched, like I said, last week I watched on with Josh and Aaron, and that's a great video. If you guys haven't checked out, go to Stuff and Whiskey on YouTube. Check out that. Kind of a different dynamic. Really good, interesting conversation between Aaron and Josh and Nick, and looking at the whiskey and the company background. I really wanted to highlight you guys in the group tonight. Give you the opportunity to go with our normal schedule, right? We taste whiskey and we react to it, and we get everybody's thoughts and let everybody participate. And that's what I really wanted for tonight. And I hope you had a really good time. Nick, I hope you had a good time hearing what we thought about your whiskey. And I think I can speak for the group that we can't wait to see what you've got lined up for the future. And we hope to see you interacting with our group again in the future. It was really awesome.
Hey, I'll be back whenever you have me. I really enjoyed this. Thank you guys.
That's great. All right, everybody. Again, it is a school night. I want to be mindful of that. So thanks a lot for participating. Thanks again to Nick from Found North. Check them out online. Check out the Stuff and Whiskey channel and their video. And I hope everybody has a great night. Nick, thanks again. Have a great night.
Thank you, everybody, for letting me
Nick.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.